a biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Tosh Sturgess filling in for Neil Johnson this week on 2020. The recent flood in central Texas has been devastating, claiming over 100 lives, dozens missing, particularly in Kerr County, where the Guadalupe River surged about 9 metres in under a single hour, totally overwhelming communities, and the now famous Camp Mystic, where the girls' camp was heavily impacted, tragically claiming 27 of those 100 lives. The Texas governor, Governor Abbott, and the President of the US, Donald Trump, have poured out their sympathies and concerns for all involved. Right now, we bring in Bill Muehlenberg from Culture Watch to share some thoughts with us as this heartbreaking story continues on. Welcome, Bill.
Great to be with you.
It's great to have you with us, mate. It's been such a heartbreaking story over there in the US, but we've seen some good guys arising, right?
Yeah, well, that's true. All time of crisis, time of tragedy will bring out the best and, well, sometimes the worst. Sometimes the virtues cannot exist without trouble, right? Think of the fruit of the Spirit, long suffering. What does that mean? What does it entail? Well, you have to suffer long. You can't long suffering in any other way. And it's the same here. Virtue, bravery, self-sacrifice. These are all things that often arise when you see a tragedy like this. So, yeah, there's a number of cases we could already highlight from this past week. One fellow who did rescue operations through a helicopter. The last I saw, he had 165 people that he rescued. So it's pretty amazing what, even one fellow in a good piece of equipment can do. The Christian owner of the Christian camp, this girls' camp that was meeting there, 4th of July weekend in America, he gave his life trying to save some of the girls there. So even that story, it's been written up already, and, we'll hear more about that. I mean, hate to say it, probably a good book or maybe even a film one day might arise out of this tragic situation. Again, we don't want to play down the suffering, the loss, but as you say, we can see great heroism, we can see great self-sacrifice. So we've seen a bunch of that happening already, and we can praise God. As you say, Texas governor has already said we got to pray for these guys. In fact, he said Sunday will be a day of prayer for this tragedy. So at the very least, that's what we can all do, keep these families in our prayers, especially thanking God for some of the heroic actions of many. And, we just got to trust God that, some have lost lives, some were miraculously saved. We might get to that dodgy or difficult question a bit later, but, God is still there in the midst.
Yeah, these types of situations, as tragic as they are, they do set a chaotic or a crisis-like background for the goodness of God to shine through. Just because there's bad in the world doesn't mean that it comes from God. It's oftentimes the case because the enemy's the one who's overseeing those things. Tell us, Bill, what's your thoughts about where to from here for the communities?
Yeah, well, it's always a big rebuilding kind of project, getting back to your life after something like this. Interestingly, I think in 1987, there was also a flood in the same area. I think back then it cost about 10 lives all up. As we say, this time, well over 100, a 30-foot rise in the river. I mean, amazing stuff. And in the middle of the night, right? Imagine being one of these girls, maybe asleep in the dormitory, and this water level starts to rise. It's panic. You don't know what's going on. So it will take a while to rebuild. It'll take a while for the community to adjust, as it always does in these situations. But again, because it was a Christian camp, in one way, this is probably, the better placed group of people, right? They know that suffering is not for nothing, that there is a God who's in charge, that even though we don't always understand, we don't have all the answers to these issues, we know that God can indeed be achieving his purposes. So again, we got to keep these guys in prayer big time.
Now, this is a tragedy. It's a huge loss of life. We saw last year, under a different presidency in the United States, response to those who had been through similar kinds of tragedy, flood sweeping through other parts of the nation. How is this presidency responding to crisis as compared to the previous one?
Yeah, we can look at these differences of approach. You're referring to the hurricane they went through in the southeast of America last year. Places like North Carolina, other places were really devastated again. But sadly, many people for a long time were saying, where's the help? Where's the government response? This was, well, don't want to politicize things, but got to state the facts. This was under the Biden-Harris administration. Not much help was forthcoming. In fact, you had people like Elon Musk and Trump who were in many ways doing more to help in that situation than the existing government. And then sadly, you had, your more kind of left media outlets like CNN saying we should not politicize this tragedy. Well, let's look at this past week, right? Same thing, new government. Trump and his team instantly were responding, sending out teams to rescue, equipment, the whole bit. And yet we have the same CNN, right, who is not a great fan of Trump, saying that, in fact, the very same broadcasters on CNN saying we shouldn't politicize things, although that's exactly what they've done. They were chewing out Trump. Texas Senator Ted Cruz saying, well, look, because of your budget cuts and so on, that's caused this flood. You're causing climate change, global warming. The flooding is all your fault. So, right, a year ago, they were saying we should not politicize this tragedy. Today, the very same people in the leftist media are politicizing this tragedy. So a real contrast both in the way governments responded and how the secular left media tends to focus on these very issues.
Yeah, it is a sad state of affairs when human tragedy causes political divides. You hear the voices of some people going from disconnected eagles, staunch in their opinion, to now being Chicken Little on the other side of an event just to try to sway public opinion. In the wash-up of that and the future forecasting for the people in that particular area, what are some of the other areas that have been leveraged in this commentary that's now circulating after the wash-up of this event?
Well, again, sadly, there is too much politicizing of these events. I've had comments to my own website as well as many famous public commentary in the U.S. on this tragedy, again, blaming Trump, blaming the Republicans. One fellow came to my site saying, this is, well, he actually said, democracy is dead in America. You Trump supporters, you've caused all this to happen. In my article on this, I actually record the story of one pediatrician in the area, right? No, somebody like that, you're supposed to be looking after little children.
Yeah. She
actually did a public post saying these kids basically got what they deserved, right? These kids, they're all mega Christian kids. They're all Trump supporters. So she actually had the gall to say these guys, got what they deserved. Now, the only good outcome out of that one, right? She was instantly fired from the clinic that she was working at. But I've seen so many others, right? Black commentators of the left saying, see, look at they're all white kids. Where are the blacks? It's a white only. Wow. It's not a white only Christian camp. The number of lies that some on the left are pushing has just been really shocking. So in contrast to the heroes, right, giving their lives to save the children, we got these really, diabolical leftist commentators of various stripes who are trying to, make a big political point out of it and basically almost seem to enjoy seeing young children die. So that's kind of the world we now live in. It's a shocker indeed.
And Bill, it's up to us all to guard our own thoughts, guard our thinking, guard our mind against the hysteria that often gets thrown out in situations like this. Comments go out that are emotive, that draw upon a certain level of compassion with people. How would you instruct or advise our Vision family that are listening in to be a little bit more discerning about what to make of headlines when they first break?
Well, we always should be discerning about not only headlines, about everything, right? It's our duty to learn to discern, to learn to evaluate whether mainstream media, even, commentary from the pulpit, right? The noble Bereans, right? Checking out daily to see whether the things Paul had said were true, lined up with Scripture. So the same here.
Yeah.
We don't want to take the inflammatory rhetoric, right, of the left, but we also want to show compassion. And there will be, again, all the usual atheist critics, right? Where was your God when this happened? Well,
without doubt. Yeah.
We can get upset with them for making those remarks, or we can take it as a teaching opportunity to try to give, right, the biblical view on these things. Tough questions indeed, right? What we call theodicy. Why does God allow suffering and evil? But we can say, hey, God is not aloof from, he's not immune to suffering. In fact, his own son, right, died a horrible death on our behalf. So the critics, the atheists will say, why do the innocent suffer? Well, actually, the only innocent person to suffer was Jesus, and he did it for us. So there's a lot of kind of teaching opportunities we can have if we're careful. Try to answer honest questions with honest answers. Sure, there's a lot of trolls out there, a lot of critics, but for those who are really interested, we can use a situation like this to try to share some biblical truth.
Wise thoughts there, Bill. We're speaking right now with Bill Muehlenberg. He's written an article on the Texas floods, literally called On the Texas Floods, and you can visit his website at billmuehlenberg.com to look for that article. Bill, thank you so much for your wise thoughts today and joining us on the program.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.